because they all had great senses of humour.
The old fella said that could he have these pictures, and Norm said no, and all I said was, well, why not be big about it?
And? Your grandfather pointed out that Sheik was always being taller than me just to spite me.
I knew it, he started it.
Hey, Paulie, would you ever sign one of them for us?
Come Ed, Sheik.
When we finished the first day's shooting on the train, they had been dropped off in a field outside of London. The train came back into the Marylebone station, and out of nowhere, again, children were starting to run towards the train. At that point, our clapper loader, who was about 24 years old with the same sort of hairdo, came smiling down, having finished the first day's work with all the negative, and the screaming started. And he panicked, and he thought, I've got to outrun them. And he started to run, and he was carrying 8 or 9 tins of film, and they caught up with him. And the film got dropped, and we lost half the first day's shooting negative. It was lying around under the tracks, and he ran for his life.
Our philosophy was, we chose the filmmakers we wanted to be in business with. We approved the scripts, we approved the budgets. They had final cut as long as the film stayed within the budget and followed the script which we'd approved. We approved the cast, etc. I had no idea what was going on, other than the fact that Dick was making the film. The word was kind of, wow, this is a strange little movie. And I was just waiting to see the film when it was finished. I certainly knew it was having a certain style, but that's great. I mean, it should be something different.
The sense that there was a slightly surreal element to the film was something that was very important to try to get in. And I wanted to prepare the audience for the fact that they would be playing cards, for example, in a part of the train, and then suddenly in the middle of it they would be playing instruments, and then they would be back playing cards, because that did seem to be something that nobody had been doing. So we used 2 or 3 little signposts, like the boys suddenly being outside the train, banging on the window trying to get in, just to say to the audience, things are not quite what they seem to be.
We didn't concern ourselves with long shot, medium shot, close shot, over shoulder shot. Forget it. We just shot the picture the way we went, and whenever something came up, it was in the picture. When George knocked his amp over on one of the shows, in the picture. But that's what it was about.
Yeah, there's one particular scene that stands out in my mind, which was the genius of John Jimson, was the sequence on the train where John starts to play with the cards, and he overlaps the sound before the actual singing starts.
Aye, the Liverpool Shuffle.
It was the first time that I'd ever seen that on film, of preempting the song. And this got you whacked right into the song, and suddenly you felt you were into something also very new again. That was one of the earliest things that John edited, and I was watching him on the Moviola and seeing him stop and think, which he always did when he cut. He wouldn't do anything immediately like that, but when he did do it, that was it. And I think Pam may agree. I don't remember any alterations to that scene, or to many scenes, of the actual editing. The construction was John, and that was it. They may have taken out a scene or shortened it by a certain amount.
Well, I had lots of letters from girls all over the world, you know, asking for pieces of their hair, but of course I couldn't. I wish I'd had enough hair to send to them, really, but I couldn't because, you know, it wasn't enough to cut off every week. But they, lots of letters I had, yeah. They didn't like everybody to be seen with it back. They always wanted to, you know, when we washed it, they always wanted, like this, you know, put their hair down in front. They never wanted to see their hair back. Because Ringo has a grey streak. He always hated to have that showing, so he used to always bring it forward if anybody came in the room, you know, they'd quickly put their hair down.
Well, the funny thing was, we made up the routine there and then on the set. And then Dick would say, well, can you do that step, this shot, this angle, that angle? So there was no rehearsal. We did it on the set. And I have to say that I found that wonderful. It's much easier. You know what the set's like, you know if there's a step there or anything, and you can choreograph your routine around what you've got. There's so much hanging around while they're setting lights and everything. It was very easy to rehearse. And of course, it didn't give us a chance to forget the steps. We did it there and then.
You see, I was never a theatre director. I was always, the expression is a kick, bollock and scramble man. It's just trying to get myself out of trouble. And I think it's using hysteria to try to con people that exuberance is taking place in front of them is a trick that I learned very early on. And again, by using a multiple camera technique, I was able to allow people the freedom to move, to go where they want as far as possible. No mark should be given to anybody. No one should have to hit a mark or sit to the center of their chairs. It was just, you do what you want to do, we'll go out in the field and have a play, and then we would find a way to turn it into a little sequence. The difficulty with this is that some 3 or 4 years later, you're asked to go to a film school in Copenhagen or Helsinki, and they put that sequence on for the students to watch, and then proceed to tell you why you did these shots and what significance they had. And it's extremely impolite to tell them the truth. And so that in the end, this kind of myth builds up, that you really knew what you were doing and that you had some control over this madhouse.
I'll show him.
I watched Dick directing under very tight conditions. In fact, at one point, he said, look, no cameras, nothing, because he wanted peace to be able to complete the shooting. So what I did was I went up into the gantry where the lights were so that I didn't interfere with anybody, and I did some high-angle shots down into the sets quietly.
Dad was visiting Twickenham Film Studios here, and he was dressed in a pretty formal dark grey suit. And in between fitting the boys' suits for the film, Paul had said to Dick Lester, Dougie's looking very, very tidy this morning. Why don't we let him play himself as the tailor? It took about 3/4 of a day shooting, and the reason was this: although it only lasted a minute and a half, the boys were constantly messing around.
Oh, this is the teacher's pet.
All that. Shade the class, eh? I'll lay off.
His scene was he was measuring Paul. Paul was then moving out of camera, and while my father was still holding the tape measure, John would then say, I now declare this bridge open. Then snip the tape measure and open. That was the official line. But of course, 100 other lines came up before that, i.e., I now declare this synagogue open, or I now declare this fish and chip shop open. So everyone was falling around laughing, and each time it had to be retaken, and that was the state of play that day.
I was completely mad in those days, obviously, and I would do a lot of jumping up and looking around and coming down again, and then a lot of other people would start jumping. They said, Ringo's going to do whatever you do, and I thought, well, let's see if he can jump as well. Actually, I was trying to keep my eye on my girlfriend at the time, who was Charlotte Rampling, and I could never quite see what she was doing, so I'd jump up and have a quick look round.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, wait a minute. Don't
No,
tell
I'm
me
not.
you're- Oh, you are?
John Lennon was extraordinary. He was an absolute natural actor. And we did the scene, and it was brilliantly written by Alan Owen.
You don't look like him at all.
The script had us finishing with, John gave me a wink, and I gave him a wink. But of course, when the film was shown, the winks were cut out.
She looks more like him than I do.
I had a wife that was a dancer called Prue, who's in the film, and she wanted to be an actress. And one of the parts that came up was a screaming teenager in the Hard Day's Night. As I knew Dick Lester, I got her a part.
Excuse me, but these young men I'm sitting with wondered if 2 of us could come over and join you.
Then there was a gambling scene, and not very many actors, one had enough money to gamble, or 2 knew how to handle a spatula, or understood about chemin de fer, or whatever.
Hello, monsieur.
So I was asked to go along and look at this and see if I could do it. I said, yes, I can do it, but I'm not a member of equity, I'm nothing. What have you, I'm a businessman. So Dick said, don't worry, we'll get you a card, and off you go. And so I did the croupier.
Huit et sept.
We had at our disposal something like 8 or 9 songs which they had just recorded. I eventually chose, I think, 7. I don't even remember why at the time I chose those 7.